So we are live. I need my hat. Not complete without the hat. Okay. So we're a couple minutes late. It's getting a little hard to keep up with these. Daily lives are no joke. Okay. Ignore all this stuff. That looks ugly. Okay, so we're doing a special thing today. And Abdullah is, of course, already here. It's one of the two. I either get very mad or very happy. I'm sure it'll be the former. I'm okay with dying mad, though. Yeah. Taylor is here. I'm going to call you Taylor from now on. How about that? You shall now be Taylor Swift. Congratulations. You have succeeded in life. So let's get a couple people in here before we launch into it. Be positive, yeah. Hello. I'm Ganeshali. Hello, everyone. Yes, it is. I have too many of these. Okay. Everybody at college calls me Taylor too. Oh, why sad? Okay. Hey, the good news is Taylor is both a boy and a girl's name, so it works, you know. You can be the male version of Taylor Swift. How about that? Can we stop this propaganda? Hi, Igor. Welcome. Okay, so I think we got enough people to start. Let's jump in. So I'm gonna. I can't song. You can't song. I can't song either. That's really hard to perform a noun. No, I know it's a typo. So we're going to be going through some points, and there's a particular video. What was it? I before voiced consonants, American English, vowel length. Throw out some keywords. There's the video. So we're going to be using this particular video. I don't know if I'm going to get any copyright strikes because I'm going to share some of this with you guys, but it's all educational purposes, and it is an educational video that I am referencing. So hopefully everything will be fine. But the reason why I want to use this particular video is one, because it's the one that Abdullah sent or mentioned, and number two, because there are a series of points that I want to address, and this video kind of brings those points up nicely. It's for use. Yeah. You would think things aren't so black and white simple. It would actually be called fair use, not free use. But it's a very, very complicated thing. I just noticed how red this looks. In real life, this is like so faded, but it looks like it's brand new. That's awesome. I guess that's the lighting. That's pretty cool. Anyway, I wrote a comment. Yeah, I know I'm going to bring that up too. So for those of you who are kind of confused about what we're talking about, there's this topic of vowel length, kind of sort of, it's not necessarily vowel length, but vowel length, and how the diphthong I is pronounced before a voiced or a voiceless consonant, or before no consonant, if it's just like, say, my at the end of a word, right? And let me see here. It should be a recent comment. Yes, summary. Okay. I'm just going to click on this. All right. So basically, what Abdullah is saying and what apparently the whole world is saying. What this teacher is saying. Abdullah mentioned Geoff Lindsay, Dr. Geoff Lindsay, who is a very good and well-respected linguist from the UK. Apparently, they all say this about American English, and I have that's where we're having the issue now. I could be wrong. I think the reality, as Abdullah and I have gone back and forth, I think the reality is maybe a little bit more subtle and nuanced, but I don't think that it breaks my original position. So the basic idea, just so we're all on the same page, if we have the diphthong I, if I say white or if I say wide, right, so white is spelled with an H. Most people don't do the voiceless W anymore. So these are going to be pairs and they're going to be pronounced the same except for the voice or voiceless consonant. Except, right, the same. Supposedly, that's what I would say. But apparently, if it's wide, then it's going to be I. It's going to be a full normal I like you would expect, just like I would say I, my, by, try, whatever. But if there's a voiceless consonant like white or rice or whatever, then supposedly it's supposed to become, instead of I, the start gets sort of reduced or shifts to like an or something basically like a schwa or the upside down V symbol somewhere in there. And then that will go up into the end point instead of the starting point. And I don't know if I should do which part I should do first here. Yeah, I think going through the video first would be better because we'll have lots more context to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share my audio. Share screen. We're going to go to this one. We're going to also share audio. Okay. Now on my computer, this just shifted me over to this window. So I see this window. I do not see you guys. I do not see the chat. So I will probably go into the chat if I need to type something, but I can't actually see what you're saying right now. So this is the video. And we're going to go ahead and go through this. I'm going to play it really quick. Let me know if you can hear it just to make sure.
Did you know that in a general American accent, there are two versions of...
Okay. So you guys hear that? Oh, look, I can go back and it shows me both, but I can't play it from this tab. That's annoying. There should be a more integrated way to do that. We can hear it. Good. Okay. So we'll go back over here. Okay, so she's...
Did you know that in a general American accent, there are two versions of the vowel I? See if you can hear the difference. I, white, sight, might. I, wide, side, mine.
Okay. So that's the basic idea, and she gave some examples there. Now, the very first thing that I'm going to say, first of all, I'm not picking on this teacher. I don't really know who this teacher is. I haven't particularly heard of her before. I have no issues with her or anything like that. This is not an attack or anything. This is just for reference and educational purposes, and I hope that she's okay with me using her video. Secondly, let me say that perhaps because it's in isolation, whenever she says, and she does it a lot, she gives lots of examples, but whenever she isolates that sort of like, I, it is one of the strangest sounding things to my ears. And it doesn't even sound American to me. Now, when she puts it in words, the words sound fine. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know if we have any words that start with I and then end in a voiceless. See, like "ite." Maybe we could say "ite," which is like a really short, informal way to say "all right." Well, there's ice, right? Okay, so yeah, ice. That's a good example. So it's still not isolated there, but there's nothing in front of it, so we can get closer to the isolation. So that's my first note, is that sounds weird in isolation, but I guess maybe we never really use it in isolation, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay, we'll set that aside.
Well, those clearly weren't the same. So what's the difference? In a general American accent, we have.
Oh yeah, the other thing I want to mention here is, so her pronunciation, her accent, she sounds very neutral. If I weren't analyzing pronunciation here, I wouldn't particularly have anything to say. But if I am listening to exactly how she sounds a little bit different than me. I can hear that she uses the unmerged ah, like in the caught merger. Um, I haven't detected the aw. I don't think my ears are quite as good for picking that out. So I don't know if she may not have the merger, or she might just be speaking in more of a traditional way, because most teachers still teach it that way for some reason. But there's little things about how she sounds. She almost sounds, in a way, it's very subtle, and I don't really want to put an exact label on it, because no label I put is going to be completely accurate. But the way she sounds in general kind of reminds me a little bit of, like, very subtly, like almost like a Valley Girl kind of. Like there's just certain, like, things that seem a little drawn out, or maybe it's just because she's teaching and she's speaking clearly or something. I don't know, but there's a little something there that kind of stands out to me if I'm paying attention. Now, of course, this person is not the only person saying this. There are other people saying this, so just because maybe she sounds a little different than me doesn't necessarily mean that that's the problem or the reason or anything like that. But I do want to point that out.
Have both a short version of the I
That's going to be relevant
and a
later.
long version of the I. The long version is I, and it has two separate parts, A and E. But
okay, so it's not actually E. I've talked to you guys about that before, but she's maybe simplifying it here.
A is longer, so we don't get I.
This is also one thing that confuses you guys, because then there's going to be students who watch this, English learners who watch this, and like, oh, I'm supposed to end in E, and then they end up coming to me later, having a class with me, and they're like, I was taught that it was E. It's like, no, it's not actually E.
We get I, a lot of A and a little bit of E. The short version of the vowel is I. Since this one's shorter, you might be better off starting with and making your way to E. So instead of I, you want to start more I. Very relaxed mouth, and you go up to the E. I.
Okay.
Ice. Rice.
Okay. So when again, maybe it's because she's enunciating, but this is the next point here. So when she says ice, and she says it like this.
Ice.
That is the weirdest sounding word ice that I've ever heard pronounced. I've never heard a person say it that way, like ice, ice, ice. Like, to me, that sounds like maybe an Irish accent, or it's probably not Australian, but it kind of like maybe what I might try to do in an Australian accent, like, oh no, or actually I guess that might be more oi, but like nice, nice, nice. Like maybe I could try to do something like that if I were trying to do Australian, maybe. But it seems so weird. Again, it's supposed to be short, but this is a stressed word. It's a content word, so it's going to come out more clearly than, say, an unstressed word where we might have some sort of reduction or something. And so it just sounds really, 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 really weird when she says it.
Rice.
Now, when she says rice, it doesn't sound too bad, but when she just said it right there, I'll play it a couple more. Come on.
Ice. Rice.
Okay, so there I hear it sounds like she's saying it a little bit differently than she just did in ice. So that's point number one. Point number two is it sounds, in this word, to me, it sounds like she's forcing it. Maybe she's not, but that's what it sounds. It's like she's trying to make it instead of ah. Maybe that's just me. Let's try to play that one more time.
Rice. Rice.
Yeah, she's like rice, rice, rice. It just kind of sounds forced to me.
Rice. So you'll start in a very neutral position rather than opening up all the way for ah. Now, these two vowels and when to use them tends to be really confusing for non-native English speakers.
This is gonna be the
They
next
might
big
all
point.
sound like I for you, or they might all sound like I for you. For example, if you're making them all short instead of by the way, you might be getting by the way.
Okay, so that's one point there. So the word by. Okay, so if we say by. Now this, so it's but and I. And as she's about to say in a moment, right, this would just be a regular I because there's no voiceless consonant after it, right? So it's only when supposedly it's only when there's that voiceless consonant after it in the word that it's going to change to the short one. So this would just be I. So she's saying, okay, well, if you say like by, see, and if I try to say it like that way, it does sound weird. That definitely sounds like an accent. However, this, as we're going to see, this ties into posture. This ties into laziness. It doesn't necessarily have to be laziness, but that can definitely affect it. It ties into possible reduction, things like that, where if I'm speaking and speed, right? Because we know speed can modify things as well. So if I'm speaking either at, say, a normal speed or especially a fast speed, and I just kind of push the word out, right? Just kind of very nice. Oh, by the way, by the way, by. I'm not saying by. I'm saying by. By the way, by the way, by the way. I'm using I'm sort of reducing the to moving towards that. So this is supposed to be I. It's not supposed to be and yet I'm making it come out as So this right here, right, even though the thing that we're debating is if I turns into a before a voiceless consonant, this is sort of an opposite case where we see something that should be I, but if I'm speaking, I'm not clearly enunciating the word, et cetera, et cetera. I'm more on maybe normal speed, faster speed, maybe a little lazy, maybe whatever. I'm kind of reducing it, just saying it, pushing it out there. It can come out more as more of an like by the way, by the way, by the way. Okay. So that right there seems to break the first rule that we're talking about. Okay. Let's continue.
By.
Notice I just said okay. That's actually a. I'm kind of doing the same thing. Okay.
By the way, where we would go by the way. And if you're
And she's also, again, maybe because she's teaching and she's really enunciating, it sounds kind of weird when she's saying like, by the way. Like that's definitely not how I sound. And that's the other thing with the posture. So the center of gravity, Abdullah has mentioned, and I think a couple other people have mentioned that when they listen to, say, like Rachel's English or some other teachers, it seems to them like the center of gravity, like it might still be in the middle, but maybe it's a little farther forward. There's like maybe I've talked about how within the posture settings, the center of gravity, all this stuff, there's a little wiggle room, right? Like you need those pieces to have the accent, but there's some wiggle room. One of the reasons why we all sound a little bit different is because not everybody holds everything exactly the same, but the basic things are all there. So if the center of gravity can be a little farther forward, okay, I think maybe she might have that as well, where my center of gravity, it's still in the middle, but it's a little farther backward. That's why I teach you guys a sort of back middle, because that's how it feels in my mouth, right? Now, when I say I can really feel my tongue is just sort of sitting here, and then I've sort of formed the sound. I. Where her, again, maybe because she's enunciating it or something, it really sounds like she's farther forward. Like she's like, I, instead of I. It's a subtle little thing. And again, that's why it doesn't really break anything. We both sound neutral, but it does create a little quality difference. A quality that's still within range of American English, but a quality difference nonetheless.
if you're making them all long,
Also, I will note, sometimes I notice myself, I will switch to that farther forward center of gravity in some words at sometimes. I've caught myself doing that. So that in itself, again, there's maybe a little wiggle room there as well. Kind of like the caught merger, how those of us who have it, which is more and more people, most of us these days, sometimes the unmerged versions come out. And that's just how it is. Like sometimes I'll say hot instead of hot. So it's a similar thing there. We're still within range.
you might be saying rise, where we would say rice. So how do you know whether to
Again, it sounds to me, it sounds like she has a very slight, when she says rice, 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 it sounds like a very, very, very subtle, not accent, like it still sounds American, I guess, but it sounds like a there's a subtle difference to it where it doesn't, it's not the way that I would say it, or not the way that I would think to say it or try to say it.
use the long one or the short one? Luckily, American English has a pretty consistent rule for the word.
Okay.
You know you're going to be getting the long I.
Okay, so words ending in I, it's supposed to be fully I, like we kind of said with by. Okay, so my, by, why, hi. Again, all of these. I can say, in fact, my can, it doesn't even have to reduce to like it can just reduce all the way to just I can say makar. Makar. It sounds a little informal unless you're speaking really fast, but you can do that. Yeah, that's makar. That's makar. Makar. Okay. If I get just that little bit of movement towards that sort of e like ending, that's my car. That's my car. That's my car. No problem. I don't have to say my. That's my car. My car. My car. It really sounds forced, over enunciated, a little shifted out of place. We were talked about by. Why? Okay. Why? This is depends on how it's being used in grammatically in the sentence, but this could definitely be stress, could definitely be a content word. If I say like, oh hey, I'm going to the beach tomorrow, and maybe my friend says like, why, really getting all the way down to I. Okay, or they could say something like, why, why, why. Okay, so again, we're breaking that first rule.
I,
So I
where
don't
you
see how
open
this
up
is
a lot
this isn't
and
like a
it's
black and white
mostly
thing.
ah. So for example, my, by, why.
Yeah, blah 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 blah. I don't want to cover every single minute here.
We need to look at what type of consonant we're.
Okay, so this is where she's
Why
talking
are you
about
to use your
voice
voice?
consonants,
M.
voiceless
Why are
consonants.
you to
So
use
these
your
are all
voice? Are going to want that
voiced.
long.
Okay, and she gives some
We
examples.
need our voices for that N.
Okay, mine.
N.
So
You
this is
cannot
then
make
after.
N, the N sound, without your voice.
Yeah, we know.
So it's a voiced sound.
Okay, so if I say mine. Again, she says it maybe more like mine. Where I would just say like mine. So again, maybe because my center of gravity is a little bit farther backward, little tiny difference there. But I can also say, yeah, it's mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. Nothing wrong with that.
And that means you need the long I. My.
Okay, she also gives 5 as an example. We'll skip over that one.
Consonant.
Okay.
We have S after the vowel. S is a voiceless consonant. It does not use the voice, so we know it has to be ice,
Sounds
with
so
the
bad.
short version of the vowel. But what if the word is I?
Yeah, that just sounds so weird. Ice. Sounds like an accent. Sounds like an accent to me when she says that very clearly. So now that we're on this section, okay, so we talked sort of a lot about how supposedly we're supposed to always say I in the other two cases, or in, yeah, then, but we see how we can actually reduce the to an Okay, so this is now the point that we've been debating, where if there's a voiced consonant or voiceless consonant after it, we have to say the part. So if I say ice, okay, I can, okay, maybe it can come out a little bit more towards the whatever. There's maybe a range or variation there, but I can very easily, I can say ice, ice. It's not ice, ice. Did you pick up the ice? Did you pick up the ice? Give me some ice, ice. And by the same rule, because the way I'm looking at this is it's all I. It doesn't matter what's after it. It doesn't matter if there's anything after it. It would all be I. And then regardless of what is after it, it may be possible if you're speaking more quickly, more lazily, whatever, you're not fully enunciating, that we can sort of reduce that to more of an I accept that. That's fine. That sounds like a normal part of the language. And so if I say, can you pick up some ice, right? Instead of can you pick up some ice, pick up some ice, pick up some ice, ice. And Abdullah was saying in one of the comments, apparently several Americans told him, at least based off how he was trying to pronounce it, which he's not a native and he admits that. But they told him when he tried to, say, ice or rice, either with more I or more I, that these Americans told him that the I one sounded more British. That makes absolutely no sense to me. It's like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. Maybe there are some Americans who would say that. I don't know. Like if they heard me pronounce it and they're like, oh yeah, the second one sounds British. But me, I'm a native speaker. I'm saying ice, even if like, because Abdullah's like, oh, you're doing the I and you don't even notice it. But here I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99.99999% sure I'm saying ice. And I don't sound British. There's no Britishness just because I'm using instead of trying to make it it's absolutely ridiculous. There could be minor sound changes like that helped contribute to an accent. Like we were saying, to me, like saying like ice, like if I just say it like that, ice, that sounds like an accent just by itself. You put into a word, maybe it doesn't sound so bad. But we also have to remember the British posture is pushed forward. The center of gravity is up here. Okay. And so what could be happening in the perception that Abdullah is getting from people is, I'm not saying necessarily because maybe he's doing everything right. I don't know. I haven't actually heard Abdullah. I can't vouch for that. But if you get too far forward, if you let your center of gravity shift too far forward, if you get too much tension up here and you try to say the I, it could maybe start sounding more British because that's closer to their posture setting. So if I say like, if I want to sound more British, it's not going to be a perfect British accent, but let me try to get my tongue more forward. Let me try to get my resonance more towards the front, tighten the lips up a bit. It's not going to be perfect, but okay. Now if I say I, I, to me that sounds British. I, and it actually sounds a bit more like I'm actually starting more on the than the I, I don't know. I, instead of I. Okay. To me, those sound very, very, very similar, but the first one sounds British. I'm doing I in both cases, but if I do it I, that sounds British to me. Maybe even Australian. I don't know, but it definitely sounds British. If I say I, I, it's subtle, but one sounds British to me. So it could just be that you're a little off in a certain detail that is making it sound more British to those people. That could be why you're getting that feedback. I don't know. Anyway.
Eyes. In this case, we have z.
Yes, we have Z after it. Okay.
In eyes. And the differences there are very subtle. Ice, eyes. Ice, eyes.
Okay, so let's see if I can say both of these with I and both of these with I. Okay, so if I say, we'll do I first. So if I say ice, eyes, ice, eyes. Okay, if I do with more like I guess I would have to say a little quicker because otherwise it's going to sound weird. So let me do the other one faster. Okay, ice, eyes, ice, eyes. Okay, ice, eyes, ice, eyes. To me, both of those sound a little accented. If I'm speaking a little bit more quickly, they'll probably sound fine. But just trying to say them kind of clearly, but a little bit faster, it does sound weird to me. Let's see. Ice, ice, ice. Pass me the ice. Pass me the ice. Pass me the ice. I can't see your eyes. 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 Again, if it gets a little too slow, a little too clear, both of them sound weird to me. But if I don't get that threshold and I'm fast enough, they both sound fine if I do the I. So I really think this is less something that it's not a black and white thing. It's more a range issue, a possible articulation issue, like a range of possible articulation, a range of how the posture is affecting things subtly between speakers. I think that's much closer to
Here's
reality.
a similar one, rice.
Let's see here. And again, as I'm doing these examples, Abdullah might be like, "You're saying the I, even though you're saying the I." There's white and wide. I can skip that. More examples. I want to use as little of this as possible. Okay, this is a good one.
Ah.
Okay, so she's of course going to say this is supposed to be I'm with an I, right?
I'm.
Yeah.
I'm.
Okay, which of course is very exaggerated. Sounds kind of weird because she's doing that, but that's for teaching purposes. So I'm a contraction of I am. Its function, if you don't have a reason to stress it or enunciate it, then you're probably not going to. That's a good word because a lot of these words, like nice, the next word that's coming up, or type, like she did, rice, ice, these are content words, right? But I'm is not a content word. And so if I say it nice and clearly and fully, yeah, I'm going to say I'm going to say I'm going. I can very, very easily reduce that to the or to the I can't even. I'm going to say I now. What am I? My brain just got wires crossed. Ice. Yeah. So if I say like I'm going, and then we can even further drop the end and just reduce it to with an M. I'm going. And then if it's I'm, not I, we can further reduce that if we're getting really lazy and just make it I'm going now. Okay, so that's actually a really bad example for this, because that can reduce all the way down to an M, from I'm to to That has 4 possible, or technically 3 possible reductions, and then 1 fully pronounced version. So I think that just further proves my position here. Things work much more off of like stress and the function of words, rather than these sort of arbitrary, like, oh, because it's before a voiced vowel, you have to pronounce it this way. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. There's no logical reason to me why we're done with this. There's no logical reason to me why you would have to modify the vowel sound just because what's after it is voiced or voiceless. Maybe I'm not aware of any case of that. Maybe they exist and I'm just not aware of them, and this is my first time becoming aware of it. But this is not, it doesn't make any sense to me. Because then technically it's like, well, we don't have, if we say like ice and eyes, those are supposed to be minimal pairs, right? The only difference is the S or the Z. But now all of a sudden they're not minimal pairs. So we just have like a whole giant list of minimal pairs that are no longer minimal pairs. And it doesn't make any sense to me. She enunciated a lot. She's breaking the rule by enunciating. The voiceless should be immediate. Sometimes she's using the schwa instead of the upside down V. You have a valid point. Yeah, we can kind of set aside the teaching stuff. I wanted to bring that up just so, like, it's in the context and stuff. And that could be part of why things sound a little bit weird. It's a valid point, but we'll ignore the fact that she's teaching and enunciating and all that, because that's not necessarily real speech. The great theory explains. Yeah, we're going to come to that next. Abdullah has a great theory. Why you wouldn't say it that way? Yeah. Hello, Fernando. Hello. I don't even know how I should pronounce that. Akif. Sorry. I know you've been here before, but I don't think I've ever tried to say your name. Maybe I did and I don't remember. But yes, welcome. Read the comment; it'll make sense. I did read the comment. I read the whole comment last night. Okay, so we're gonna go through that. I'm gonna skip that for now. Okay, devoicing. I don't know what. That's so random. Yeah. Okay. So we dropped into the stream and we're figuring out what's going on. Okay. Look up these words in the Oxford Dictionary. They sound like her. See, I don't trust the dictionary. because I can go to the Oxford Dictionary, and maybe on this point it's consistent. I don't know. Some things are more consistent than others, but I can go to the Oxford Dictionary, it'll tell me one thing. I can go to dictionary.com, it'll tell me one thing. I can go to Merriam-Webster, it'll tell me one thing. Sometimes they match up. Sometimes two of them will match up and one won't. And it's not just a matter of like the exact method they're using. Like literally, like there's a difference in what they say it should be, and they're all supposedly American English. It's not like, oh, this one is for British English. Like, no, they're all saying this is American. So that's one reason why I say focus on your ears, not your eyes. It can be good to kind of use it as reference if you're kind of like really not sure, you can't quite hear it. But it should always be taken with caution. The dictionary is great for the meaning of words. That's the whole purpose of a dictionary, but it has issues when it comes to pronunciation. I think it marks stress pretty well usually, but yeah. Happy to see you again, Abdullah. Yeah, oh, Abdullah, not me. I see. That's fine. Yeah. Hi, Fernando. Yeah, she's enunciating a lot, in my opinion. The Great Theory agrees, unfortunately, that you're not using I'll die mad. Okay. We'll get to the Great Theory in a second. I'm trying to catch up on the comments here. I don't have an option to tag anyone. How do you guys tag me? I don't know how that works. Oh, the @ symbol, yeah. Maybe that doesn't work on my mobile. It might be a mobile issue. I'm pretty sure the @ symbol is what you do for that, but I don't know. I really liked one of your videos. You talked about devoicing at Teacher Josh. That's definitely not going to work. It would have to be @ and then the whatever the YouTube username is. So it'd be like @English Hacks or Native English Hacks. But yeah, that might have been partial devoicing, partial end of word devoicing. I think that's the main one I talk about devoicing on. Okay, so let's get to Abdullah's Great Theory here. And I'll go ahead and let's see here. We're gonna share the screen again. Some of you might find this part a little bit dry, but don't worry. We're gonna share. Okay, I don't need audio anymore, so I'll take these headphones off. I know this is a little small. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Okay, it should be better, I think. Why? I don't think I can get rid of that. And it's going to scroll past it. Yeah. Okay, so we have this small window. Sorry. But okay, so here's a summary. So main claim made by Abdullah. The diphthong I is different when it comes before a voice consonant and a voiceless consonant. Okay, so we're all on the same page with that. We know that we're discussing the issue here. When it comes before a voice consonant, we use I. However, when it comes before a voiceless consonant, we use I. Furthermore, it is mandatory to be done this way. So this is our first major point of disagreement, because I can concede that whether it's the upside down V or an actual like really more true schwa sound, which again is sort of the range for one sound in American English, we perceive it as basically one sound. I can concede that, especially if we're speaking more quickly, whatever, that this can happen. But as I said, I think it can happen regardless of if it's voiced or voiced after. And I don't think it's mandatory. So this seems to be really the big key thing that Abdullah and I disagree on, is he believes that this is mandatory. You absolutely have to make that difference, where I say it's something that can happen. Just like I can say I, like referring to myself, or I can reduce it to like or something like that, or like we said with I'm, right? It has all those reductions that it can happen. You're not required to say I'm. You're not required to say they're just things that can happen, okay, based on various factors. Okay, and then of course clarification, little with little, or the or the IPA symbol for like an it with a little symbol under it, means that isn't completely, it's approximately, which is what I tell you guys. You can end in you don't want to end in e, but as long as you're in that area, you're fine. So that is valid and true. Possible counter arguments to his main claim, also made by Abdullah. Okay, so first theory. So this is Abdullah, right? Some speakers, I think this is, this is Abdullah. Some speakers rise their instead of using the However, rising is mandatory, and not doing that will make you or someone, word there, make subject sound unnatural. So here he's saying whether you use the start of I or whether you use that more type sound, that either way you have to rise. There has to be some sort of rising. Maybe the back of the tongue comes higher, whatever. Okay. Second theory, the great theory of Abdullah. Let me check the comments here really quick, make sure Abdullah's not yelling at me that I got something wrong. Let's see. Is it yellow? I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about. Looks like we're all playing with the @ symbol. Okay, so everything looks like it's on track. Let me go back to this one. Okay, so second theory, the great theory by Abdullah. So this is our main thing. Was there a third theory? Additional information. Okay, so this is Abdullah's grand theory that he's going to bring everything together and solve the problem. Okay, so the the start of I, is in a spectrum. We probably say on a spectrum. Why? That's not logical. It actually is. But in is logical, but that's just not what we would probably use. It's possible we might say it, but on would definitely be more common. Anyway, we're not here for prepositions. It's just I'm poking at Abdullah when it comes to rising. Okay, so whether there's rising or degree of rising or whatever, we're saying that there's some sort of spectrum here, okay, where you can rise more or rise less. That's basically what's going on, I guess. To simplify things, we're going to divide the spectrum into 3 As. Okay. And as he says here, I named these 3 As. So this is a special thing that Abdullah is doing to help lay all this out. So those 3 As are 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So it's based on the start of I, right? That one sound, but we're going to have 3 slightly different versions of it. The bigger the number, the more raised the sound is. I assume maybe with the back of the tongue, I don't know, like maybe we don't have to specify exactly what is raised. And I did tell you guys in the phase 2A lesson that the start of I, which is also the start of ow, and even can raise the back of the tongue. Okay, they don't have to. They can be a little bit lower. They can be a little bit higher. That's optional. Okay, and this is one reason why I'm going to kind of disagree with this theory, which I'll come back to in a second. I'll get through the rest of this because I don't think that this is a mandatory thing. I think it's something that can happen. It's part of the little flexibility of the articulation of the sound. So some speakers use a 1 plus approximate before a voiced consonant. So if we say like wide, right? So that would be, I guess, the least raised. Okay. But they use plus before a voiceless consonant. Some speakers have A2, so we're a little bit more raised in our starting position plus And in addition to that, they also have A3 plus So there are speakers who have little raising in the start, and then they use the I before a voiceless consonant. Then there are some speakers, according to Abdullah, that have medium rising in the start position, and in addition, they have a higher rising in the start position. These speakers are special since they can use A2 all the time. That would maybe align more with what I'm saying. You can always use it doesn't matter. It doesn't. I can't speak. It doesn't matter whether it's before a voiced or voiceless consonant. However, they sometimes raise their A2 to A3 before a voiced consonant. Okay, so this part here, I see this. I wouldn't see a need to split it here. I would just say you're just using all the time, and if it's a little more raised or not, it doesn't matter. But this part here of your theory, provided I understand what you're saying here, I think I do. I think this is fair. This part, I would say maybe some speakers do this. Okay, so I would, well, yeah, so you said some speakers. So you're saying that raising is mandatory no matter what. It just depends on if we're before a voiceless consonant, do we absolutely have to do this or not? Okay, so that's a more subtle position, which I like, and I think is more in line with reality. I wouldn't even necessarily say some speakers. Now, it could be the reality that some speakers are maybe all this, and some speakers are maybe all this or whatever. But what's probably even closer to the reality, more nuanced, is that um, it could even be that some speakers are often like this, some speakers are often like this, or that some speakers, like a few speakers are always like this, or a few speakers are always like this. But the reality is that in any given speaker, I would think that we're really talking about a range of possible articulation. And in anybody's speech, for the most part, it doesn't have to be every single person. But I think overall, not some speakers, but sometimes any given speaker would do this, and sometimes any given speaker would do this. So it's actually all one big range, one big mixed up range of possibilities of what can happen. And then the voiceless consonant is what triggers either doing this or, being more or less raised or whatever. I could see that as a possibility. But would it be mandatory? I still wouldn't say it would be mandatory. That's where we would still disagree. Okay. A1 is called unraised, partially raised, completely raised. These names don't really matter. I should have got to that first because that would have been a little clearer, but I think we got that. For the first group, they need to go by these rules to sound natural. They can't mix them up, which doesn't make much sense to me. So you're saying if for the people who do this, if they try to do the other version, they won't sound natural. But then why do these people sound natural? That doesn't make sense to me. Additional information, Josh might like it. Actually, the great theory by Abdullah supports the notion of different mouth postures, which, to be more subtle, it's not different mouth postures. It's a range within the mouth posture settings, within the possible settings that we don't want to break it, right? We're not going to British English or Spanish or something like that. So I would clarify that. But since it states that the first group have the back of the tongue not raised compared to the second, so Abdullah's looking at this as maybe like because there might be slightly different mouth posture settings within the range of American English. Again, not breaking anything, just a little forward center of gravity, little tiny details like that. That then it would be mandatory, depending on exactly where the person's settings are, to either do it the first way or the second way. I still wouldn't say mandatory, but I would say maybe if you have your mouth posture settings tilted this way, you're still within American English, but you're tilted this way. It doesn't necessarily forward or back. I'm just saying if you're sort of tilted maybe towards one end of the range of American English, that it's maybe much more likely or much more common or just happens to create the effect where it's going to come out that way. In that case, I can maybe give you the mandatory thing, maybe based off that. Because in that person's settings, but again, I maybe it's just me, maybe not all speakers do this, but as I said, I've noticed sometimes, okay, I'll unmerge the ah to the other two sounds occasionally randomly in words, and I don't even notice it. But usually it's ah. With my center of gravity, sometimes I've caught myself a little bit farther forward, just a little bit, still in the middle, but I notice, hey, it doesn't quite feel as far back, and that's fine. There's wiggle room. Okay. So maybe some speakers are maybe a little bit more biased in one direction, but then they'll kind of slip back the other way sometimes. Maybe some are maybe biased in the other direction, and they'll kind of maybe slip forward sometimes. Again, it's all one range. It gives us wiggle room to work around in as long as you don't break the basic posture settings. So it could be that for some individuals, yes, they're kind of just on one side or the other. But I think number one, it wouldn't necessarily matter because you can work within the range. And it may be the case that if you slip, more slightly in the other direction, like, okay, the particular time that you said that thing, maybe it sounds a little bit different or weird compared to how you usually say it. Of course, you're probably not going to notice, and nobody's really going to notice. But if somebody's really paying attention, analyze, I noticed that you said this a little differently this time. So it's not enough to create an issue. So I still hesitate to put mandatory on it, but perhaps in this context we can say maybe it could theoretically be mandatory within the flexibility of the posture settings based on what somebody is doing. Okay, sure. I still don't think so, but sure. That is a possibility. That is definitely a possibility. Feel free to use the comment in your live stream. I did. And yes, Abdullah, of course. Thank you for your contribution. I mean, your name is literally all over this, and of course we're talking about this in the live stream, but yeah, no, I get it. Abdullah's contribution to American English. Abdullah has contributed a lot to this channel in the background, you guys. Like, you don't even know. He is like an MVP of the channel. Okay, so you say you don't have I guess maybe. How do you pronounce I? Okay, so I think there's a little misunderstanding here then. So that's not what I said. I'm not sure what the 3 I's or the 3 A's are supposed to be. I assume it's supposed to be the start of I. I don't know. We might be a little lost here. I'm confused. I think you might be confused. I think we're both confused. So clarify maybe. Yeah, we'll come back to that. There are 2 groups. You fall in the second category. Okay. I answered your question in the comment. You can use A2 all the time, but not A1 all the time. Okay. Well, yeah, maybe I don't fully understand everything Abdullah said, but based on what I understand, I could agree with that. It seems reasonable. But anyway, so for the most part, Abdullah, do you feel that this is satisfactory, even though at the end of the day we might still ultimately not agree on the degree of mandatoriness? I think we maybe have a little bit of a middle ground that you can kind of say, okay, well, maybe there's this range, there's this posture stuff going on, and I can kind of say like, okay, maybe within the flexibility of the posture, one might tend to be a little bit more mandatory or result of because of those settings. You don't have A1 to begin with. Okay. I really don't even see how it's relevant. Anyway, we're probably just going to continue to disagree on nuances, if anything else. Abdullah and I are always going to agree on or disagree on things. That is the moral of the story. It's like half of the comments throughout videos that Abdullah has left have resulted in back and forth discussions and disagreements and stuff, and which is fine. You know, that's good. There's no problem with that. OC. Yeah, I cannot speak. I was gonna say IC. I'm gonna say O. I say O and then IC, and I said OC. I dropped the I. You're correct in your accent. Okay, well, at least we can agree on that much. So, yeah. This is... So I assume maybe you put like the multiple A's to try to emphasize that it's like the ah and father. Which makes sense. I see why you would do that. I do have, you don't have to use it, but if you're interested, you can find a link to it in the description of any video, including this one. There's the English Hacks Phonetic Transcription Guide, which some people don't like, but some people do. I think more people than not who like the channel like this guide. And it's phonetic because the symbol, the spelling that I use is always the same. So I'm using English letters instead of IPA letters. And for example, if I do E, I always write it E. Even though a common spelling pattern is EE, a common spelling pattern is EA. Sometimes it's just the letter E, like in me or he. But if I'm going to try to represent that sound, I'm always going to phonetically transcribe it EE. And so then oh, this is the E sound, not the or the or whatever. The like in bed, would always be EH with a silent H. Okay, and there's a reason it's silent. It's related to English. This method of transcription also helps you sort of get used to how and why native speakers use certain silent letters. So this is E with a silent H that represents the as in bed. That way, number one, I don't have to go and always try to type IPA symbols. Number two, you don't have to learn or worry about IPA symbols. So as long as you're talking to me, you can always use the transcription that I use within that. Now, in typing a comment, there's some things like underlining certain things, like for R colored vowels, I put like say AWR and then I underline them all for the R. That you probably can't do in the comments, but I'll understand what you mean. Like I don't need the underline. The underline is more for you guys. That's really easy to write and talk about. Exactly. Right. That's part of the purpose of it. It's to simplify it and make it easier so you don't have to worry about all that craziness. So for okay. Now this is one little trick because AH, okay, some teachers use that to represent the unmerged like in hot. And some teachers, or at least many natives, if not some teachers, tend to use AH to represent the sound as in cat. Now there's the word like you realize like and we write that AH, probably because it's based off the unmerged version. So it's sort of this big mix up, but there's many natives that would write AH if they're trying to show the sound like in cat. And then there's maybe some natives and many teachers who use AH to represent the unmerged like in hot. So what I did, I went like I usually do. I went more in line with, okay, what do most natives do? Or maybe it's not even most natives. That's the way I've always done it. That's the way I've seen many people do it. Maybe that's just because of where I am. Maybe half the country doesn't do it that way. But regardless, within my phonetic transcription method, just so everything is clear, which I explain in that document in the guide, AH is always like cat. Okay. Because remember, I have the cot merger. So because I have the cot merger, that AH would no longer represent the like in hot. Okay. Then there's the AW. Usually the AW represents what looks like a C. It's sort of a backwards C, like aw. Okay. But I have the cot merger, like more and more Americans do. It's becoming the standard thing. So, where before we had, right, and usually for cat, right, they'll write two A's because it's supposed to be the long A, which is its own problem in itself. Because that causes all sorts of potential issues for various reasons. So we're going to ignore the AA. I never use AA. Okay. Because I have the cot merger, the and the aw became one sound on the back of the tongue. And so now I don't put AH for I don't put AW for aw. I put AH for so we don't have to worry about the double A. There's no need for that. And then now the AW, silent W, is just this one merged sound back here, okay? Now, if you don't know that, because most teachers don't talk about the cot merger, then things can be confusing. And I understand you come into my system and you're like, this is confusing compared to what I learned. But a lot of the feedback I get after people sort of look at it and they understand what's going on, and many people want to learn the cot merger because it makes things simpler anyway. And they wish other teachers would talk about it more. That's the feedback I often get from students. They tend to embrace my approach. Not all of them do. Some of them like to do things they've always done. But yeah. Yesterday I asked my friend if he pronounces the vowel in white and wide the same. He says he does. I don't know if that helps though. Could be his perception, but I would agree. Like if you ask me, I would say I do. Yes. What about? Oh yeah. So sorry, I have to actually answer this question. That sort of got lost. So the start of I is not a. Okay, I talk about this in the I lesson. For that sound. Sorry, there's a plane. The start of I is not a like in cat. It's not ah, the merged ah, like in father or saw. Okay. It's not the unmerged ah, like in hot or father. It's not the unmerged o, like in saw or whatever. It's a completely different a sound. Okay. So I think that's maybe the source of the confusion. So in my, it's, which I could show you on the vowel chart, but I don't have that pulled up. Let me see. Pronunciation images. I open this. And then I can share screen. I'm definitely running out of time, guys. So we're going to move towards wrapping this up, but let me share my screen here. So many screen sharings today. Bam, diphthong chart. Okay, so this is I. Now the a is more like around here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it's a little farther forward and higher, and it's a different symbol. The unmerged a, like in hot, would be maybe around here somewhere. Okay, maybe a little farther back. The aw would be somewhere around here, and then the merged ah is back here. So ah, I, ah. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see my screen there. If not, that was maybe a little confusing, but I have diphthong charts available too as well. I don't know if there's a link to that in the description because I had a website at one point and I moved them out of the website, and then I don't know if I kept the link in the description to the drive folder. But I have diphthong charts or vowel charts. Anyway, the point is that it's a completely different a sound. Okay, so you have to do it as such. Peninsula American, I believe I'm correct. So you're saying I'm the regionality. Definitely going to disagree with that. It could be. I mean, there are some things that are maybe like more Western American based. Like I think the saying e in the ing ending, the added ing ending, or even the not added ing ending, because we can use both vowels. I think using the e instead of the I is more of a Western American thing. I don't know how common it is around the rest of the country. But again, it's one of those things that are so small and so subtle that most people don't really notice, and it doesn't really give you an accent. It's just a small little tiny change that makes you sound a little bit different. Still general American, still neutral sounding overall. So in that context, we could maybe say that this detail is maybe more Western American or something. I could maybe grant you that, but to say general American English as a whole, like Western American English is literally half of American English. It covers half the country. So I don't know. Yesterday, I already did that. What about IA as in, is the sound A the same as in AI? So we don't want to confuse sound and spelling. Okay. We don't want to confuse sound and spelling. So AI, when we write that usually in capital letters, to show that we're talking about sounds, that's a diphthong. Okay. We're starting in ah, we're ending in around I. If you switch it, ia is not a diphthong. Okay, like we don't reverse it. We don't say ia or something like that. I have noticed that sometimes, like if we say like Maria or area, you can kind of end in more of that ah sound. It's sort of an interesting little thing. But what usually happens is it's just a schwa. It's not a diphthong. It's not anything. It's just a schwa. So usually ia Maria area, et cetera, et cetera. It's just So we go E, link. So that actually more of an E sound, but E, link it with a small Y, and then go into to That's just normal linking rules. In your accent, you can use A2 all the time. It's common for you to rise A3 comes before voiceless. However, you can sometimes use lazily important. You can't use A3. I don't care. This is where, like, I appreciate your grand theory, but for me to try to sort out and keep in mind all of the various, this is this and this is this and this ties to that and this ties, and we have the 3 and the 2, and then okay, so you can't use this, but you can do, like, it's a lot for me to, like, I feel like I'm studying a book or something. Like, I have to memorize all the labels and stuff, and conceptually I understand it, I appreciate it, it makes sense. I don't necessarily agree with every detail, but I don't remember every little detail of the 3 and the whatever. So I'm not gonna sort of keep pushing on it. I live in the northeast. We don't say east north, unless you want to say east and north, but northeast. East and north is not northeast, but it depends on what you wanted to say. If you mean like east and north, then you would have an and. But if it's northeast corner, you'd switch the words. Rachel has it. British speakers use A1 plus or very similar. The an I sounds very similar to It does. It does sound very similar. Well, it can. To us, it doesn't sound very similar. I think people who maybe aren't trained, it also can sound similar, because when I was first trying to, like, when I first sort of started teaching this stuff, and I was trying to, like, figure out, like, okay, what exactly is happening. I was also looking at, like, references, and, like, this is what they say it should be, and let me play with it. Let me see if that makes sense. So when we do I, yeah, I don't think that I ever had any issue with, like, is it or is it not but when I was saying, like, ow, was it ow? Yeah, ow can really sound like this because it's the same starting sound in ow, but it can really sound a bit more like which is interesting for various reasons, but it's not maybe possibly it can kind of become an if maybe we're really loose with it, but it's not supposed to be an and then a or the end point for ai oi. I was trying to figure out, is it e, because a lot of people say, well, it's e, but then you look at the IPA and it's and it's like, is it E or is it I? And so I was playing with it, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's not E. That sounds weird. Anyway, blah 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 blah. Why sounds sound? Why sound in man doesn't sound like in cat? Oh, I love that I have content. I'm at the point in this channel where I don't even want to say half, but maybe like a quarter of the questions I get, I'm just like, here's a video that I made 2 years ago. In fact, somebody asked this exact same question like 4 days ago, and I sent them a couple links, and they're like, oh my God, you already answered this. Yeah. So let's see here. Truth about So I have 2 videos I'm going to show you that are related. The first one is I'll put this here. The truth about before N and M. Okay, so that's that one. Now, I don't know if the link will actually work. If it doesn't, you can just type that in and it'll probably pop up. That one will directly answer your question. There's a related video because it's not just is just the most noticeable case, where we have nasal vowels. So yes, English does have nasal vowels, partial nasal vowels. It's not like in Portuguese or French where we have full-on nasalized versions of vowels. Why did that not pop up? Let's try nasal. There it is. Nasalizing vowels in English. Get a shared link. Again, this is real spoken speech. There's a lot of teachers who are like, no, you shouldn't be teaching this. This isn't right. This is nonsense. People shouldn't do this. This is real, actual speech. That's what I'm teaching you. And I don't think it's something that necessarily has to happen, but it's definitely something that does commonly happen. So this is nasalizing vowels in English. Again, remember it's partial nasalization, which I try to emphasize in the video. You don't want to full on say like something like that. And even for the a before n and m, it's partial. So the a before n and m, that's it stands out more, probably because of where the a is. It's so extreme, but there are a few details that explain why a sounds a little different. It's not just the nasalization. There's a couple other things going on. So that's specific to that sound in that video. But then the other video, nasalizing vowels in English, which I forgot the S on vowels, that one shows how that particular detail that applies to a also applies to all vowels. And it's just because since we're getting ready to go into a nasal consonant, the soft palate will start to loosen up a little bit in preparation for, like, we close into the M and then the air can go through. So it's not a full-on opening, full-on nasality in the vowel itself, but there is a little bit of extra nasality compared to normal. And we don't even notice it in speech because it's so small, but it is there. So yeah, you can go check those out. It's complicated, so I don't care. Do you want? Well, that's not what I meant, but it's this, like, I feel at this point that maybe you disagree. I feel like the case is kind of closed. Like we're any subtleties that we're going to disagree on, but we kind of found more or less a middle ground, I think. And like, I'm kind of over discussing it for the most part, not because like it's just because like I feel like we discussed it enough. And then to like keep going and I know you want to like explain your nuances and stuff, but it doesn't seem like that big of a point to me, because like, as I said, like everything I said earlier, like I can use the I in both cases. I can maybe use the I if I'm speaking more quickly or lazily or whatever. So maybe that's just based on my perspective, but because of that, I don't see why we should like keep talking about it and keep talking about the nuances and keep talking about this and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, they're like sisters, close but not the same. Kind of, sort of. We can say that. The a and the start of I. And before n sounds because you have to raise the tongue to say the n. No. Welcome. I'm definitely gonna have to go, guys. So I'm trying to finish up the comments here. Keep that in mind. So really quick on this. Well, again, if you watch that video, there's like 3 key reasons, 2 or 3 key reasons why the a might come out a little bit differently. This is when we do the way that some teachers teach it, like even Rachel's English, she'll say that it's and going. So like if you say like man, it's actually gonna be like man, and that is a possibility. That's not required. That's not how it should be. That's something that can happen. And I think that one common thing that can happen is even for natives who may be trying to listen to it, if they're not like super familiar with this topic, they might kind of hear that, oh, it seems a little bit more kind of like an eh in a way, when it's actually just like a lazy ah. Because right, every teacher teaches you like when you say the jaw opens slightly and we're on the front of the tongue. You say and the lips come out. And then when you say ah, you have to open the jaw really wide and make sure you say ah, ah, ah. And so what most English learners end up doing, whether it's before N or M or not, when they're trying to say the ah sound, what they do is they just get their mouth super, super, super wide, and then they sound really weird and over enunciated. And of course, they're probably not even making the right sound anyway. Ah has very little to do with opening the jaw. Does it tend to open the jaw to some degree? Yes, it tends to be a more open sound, just like ah. Do we have to open the jaw any more than just this little bit? No, we don't. I can say, so if I go okay, it's sort of a lazier it's a little less fully formed, but the main difference is that I'm just pushing down more and they're all basically on the same spot on the tongue. And when I push down a little bit more on the I get more of the sound compared to There's other little subtle nuances that can happen in the You can get back of tongue raising. It's not required. You can get the back push forward a little bit. It's not required. I talk about that in the phase 2 mouth posture lesson, phase 2A. So I've covered all these details before. It doesn't just magically become because there's an N. Because if that were the case, then the T and the D are in the same spot, which means that anytime there's a T or a D, the would become Doesn't make any sense. Does not make any sense. Okay, even the British is not the same. That is true, and that's because of posture. There may be slight articulation differences, but I'm pretty sure it's mostly because of the posture. And their center of gravity is way up here. So their is going to be kind of already tighter up here and pulled up here, where our tension is here in the middle. And then we get our little dip or whatever. So I'm not an expert on British English, so I can only say so much about that. But posture explains a lot of accent. Welcome. Yes, thank you, King Lion, since it took me a while to get there. It's ridiculous to think that the United States has 3 accents, New York, the South, and normal people. It is more nuanced than that. It's not New York, the South, although I can see why you might label it that way. New York, the South, and normal people, especially normal people. Yeah, New Yorkers and Southerners aren't normal. No, of course they are, but I know what we mean. Don't cancel me. We're all on the same page. We're joking. We're not actually saying you guys are not normal. Anyway, I'll check these videos after live stream ends. Thanks, no problem. You can ignore me. It turned out to be fine. Yeah, good. Very good. I think, yeah, okay, I don't care. Which, by the way, I will say, Abdullah, because this is relevant to like the logic stuff and to the issues like this and pronunciation. When I say I don't care, I think that can be misinterpreted as just like whatever, like very dismissive. And it definitely can sound like that. But usually when I say I don't care, it depends on the context, but it's usually not in like just a purely dismissive way, like whatever, go away. It's usually like I have a reason why. Like usually a lot of the time it's like academics, like there's like theoretical academics, like something that some professor somewhere, sure, maybe they have tools and measurements and stuff. I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong, but it's sort of like you have a professor who's describing to you how to ride a bike, how the physics of a bike works, and how you should sit with proper posture on the bike, and how you should when you're going at a slower speed, you would turn more with the handlebars, where if you're going more at a faster speed, you have to use counterbalancing, and you kind of more lean with the bike, and blah, 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 blah. And like, that's a lot of what language teaching is, and especially linguistics in particular. That's a lot of what it is. It's a description telling you how to ride a bike, and what are the I mean, maybe not even some of the mechanics, but what are the forces at work there. And none of that information, well, I don't want to say none of that information, some of that information might be useful if you've never seen a bike before. Okay, some basic information on what it is and what you do with it and how to get on it and how to start going, that can be useful information. But even the idea of like, okay, if you're going slower, you have to turn the handlebars. If you're going faster, if you try to turn this way, the bike's going to go that way because of counterbalancing. It's physics, right? Which we intuitively get as creatures moving through space that, you know, have sort of mastered that more or less. But let's say you're an alien and you don't intuitively get that. Okay, so knowing some of that information can be useful. Or you can have none of that information and you can go and get on and ride the bike. Okay. Now, when we're talking about like some of the things I talk about, like the English hacks, like, oh, there's the caught merger. Oh, there's, you know, you can use e or I when you do the added ing. Blah, 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 blah. Like all these little details and things like that, whatever. When I say like, I don't care, I'm saying like, I don't care if some linguist or some teacher says you have to do like ah and aw. You don't. That will not make you sound any more or less neutral, relatively speaking, because especially since caught merger is sort of becoming the standard. That's a special point there, but it's you know, and then like, oh, vowel length and just little details like that. That's usually why I say I don't care, because it's like I don't care what some teacher or what some academic says, even if they're right. They're not necessarily. It's not necessarily the only right answer, right? So again, it depends on context when I say that, but I'm never trying to be purely dismissive. There's usually a reason why I say it. In this particular case, I say I don't care because I'm kind of, I think we're done talking about it for the most part. Like we sort of sorted it out, and I think we're at a decent point. Like you said, it turned out to be fine. So sorry, but again, I don't have the time all day to go back and forth on this anyway. Igor is probably gone. Sorry, but if you're waiting for my acknowledgement, you can go, sir. Thank you. You're correct. You can use out. You want to say ah? It's hard for me to automatically go right into that without saying I or ow. All the time. It's just that there are other accents that don't do that. You have a merger. Okay, we can maybe consider it a merger. I think that's fair. A merger of some sort. And just like, oh yeah, okay, that works. That functions. Okay. Teacher last question, I could perfectly pronounce E sound like in meat without stretching or widening my mouth. All teachers. Yeah, good point. So just like I was sort of saying a little bit on the and the I was more on the jaw height, but right. So I've talked about this. And I have lessons for all the sounds, and then especially in the mouth posture phase 2A. Okay. I talk about the lips, about the posture, the hinge, all this stuff as you're doing those sounds. Okay. And even variations for how to shape things, because there's sort of a range of possible shapes and positions for some sounds. With the front vowels, it is a common thing that we get some sort of lip pulling. So E is the biggest one. E, ah. Okay. Never required. It is not required to produce the sound. Can it make it sound a little clearer? Yes. Okay. So if you're enunciating, we most likely will have that engaged. If you're emphasizing, we most likely will have it engaged. Still not necessarily required, but it's going to be much more likely. If you actually, right, because there's what teachers say, and then there's what people do. And a lot of the time, I'm not saying teachers are always wrong. A lot of the time, those things will match. Okay. But just look at how natives actually move their mouth, especially if it's a lip issue. Okay. You're going to just like go on Youglish.com. Youglish. And just type in a word that has E, like see, me, be, he. Right now, it may depend on if it's stressed or not. That can have a little bit of an effect on how clearly it might be enunciated. But just type in a word that has the E sound, and then it's going to show you lots of clips that use that word. Okay, and you can just look at people's mouths. Now, context is important. If they're on stage giving a speech, they're maybe a little more likely to enunciate. You might see them using it more. If it's more of like a casual interview type thing, they're probably going to be speaking a little bit more naturally, a little bit more normal, and you might see them pull the lips a little bit less. Okay, but look at the mouths of native speakers. If you're watching a movie, if you're watching TV shows, right, you're watching Friends, look at the way that things move. In acting, there is a bit of enunciation for clarity, and so that can maybe throw things off, but I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue there. So but yeah, I can say E. So if I neutral lips, relax, wants to at least tighten a little bit here, but we don't really have to use the lips for ooh, ooh, ooh. The ooh and the o, those are ones that really tend to kind of at least get a little bit of movement. Ooh, oh, ooh, oh. Okay, but all the front vowels, you don't have to use the lips. Now, as long as your jaw needs to be open enough, if your jaw is a little bit closed in your native language compared to American English, that is important. We need enough space, and your tongue setting has to be low. If your tongue setting isn't low and you don't use your lips, then you're probably going to sound very muffled. Okay, so this is based on having the proper settings so that there's enough space in the mouth so that it can come out without having to pull the lips back. It matters since this information can make someone sound unnatural, but hey, whatever. I don't know if I can agree with it making someone sound unnatural, but am I late? Yes, you're very late because I'm leaving. We get welcomes from multiple people. Teach us we should. Teach what? Teach us we should. I don't understand. I'm just focusing on phase 0 these days. Yeah. Well, it's good. Now, don't get too hung up on it, right? Like, it's good to go through it. You got to get familiar with it. You got to practice it. These are guides. They're designed to help you build awareness. They're designed to help you build better control. You don't have to try to master, especially phase 0. You don't have to try to master every little detail. I think that is kind of a waste of time. Okay, so if you're just starting with phase 0, or you feel like I still can't quite get it, or I can't quite feel, I'm not quite aware of this or that, then definitely continue playing with it. You could look at some other stuff in posture while you're doing phase 0, because phase 0 is a base. You can always go back to those exercises, but don't fall into the trap of getting stuck in phase 0, because that's more a human psychology thing, where we feel like we have to perfect one thing before moving on, when really you just kind of have to get this good enough, because it's just a tool to help you move forward. The problem is people on YouTube speak clear and don't link as much when they're speaking in the stream. Yeah, that's also another thing. YouTubers, some of us don't. I kind of try to just speak more naturally, but subconsciously, because you're English learners, I tend to maybe enunciate a little bit more than normal. But yeah, many YouTubers, right, when they're looking up like how to make better YouTube videos, blah 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 blah, and they find information about like how to talk to the camera, make sure that you enunciate more, make sure that you're speaking clearly so that your audience can understand you. Okay, and then so you get a lot of YouTubers who don't speak completely 100% natural the way they would in everyday life, and at the end of the day, it's a small point, right? It's usually not as enunciated as like teachers, like language teachers, because they're really going to, spell things out, especially when they're talking about like this exact sound as I. No, we never say like I want to go to the beach. Obviously, that's a teaching thing, so we understand that. But if we just say I want to go to the beach, it sounds a little unnatural. It's way too over enunciated. So it's a thing to keep in mind, but as long as you're aware of that, it's not the biggest deal. Like, the world isn't perfect, right? So it's fine. It's fine. I don't want to scare people off from using all the amazing free resources they have to help their English on YouTube, because there's literally millions of videos that you can watch. ESTP. Yeah, I don't think Abdullah wants to get into that conversation. He's probably just gonna say Taylor sucks. Go away, Swifty. Anyway, thank you guys. I managed to reach the end. I am gonna go tomorrow. What are we doing tomorrow? I need to look at my lives. That's what I get for moving things around, because then I'm like, I don't know where everything is. So that's live. Tomorrow we're doing logical preposition in. We're gonna take a look at in. There will be a Q&A there. We can, if you have questions about prepositions, we can bring that there. But the lesson part will be about in. It's going to be sort of an overview. And I want to do that because I think it's going to be a relatively easy way to see how the concept applies, because in is always a container, but it has very abstract applications. Some of them were even difficult for me to sort of map out and explain, but I do think that they work. So, and then we have a Q&A after that. All right. I reached the end and now I'm not at the end anymore. Tip of the tongue should be after fourth teeth. Well, the tip of the tongue is way up here, right behind the teeth. The hinge is here. So there's like pretty much the whole front of your tongue is in front of the fourth tooth. Yeah. I think there's some typos in there. Maybe. Se fue re ardido. I don't know what the re part is. That would be good. Thank you so much. Today's live was very interesting and funny. Funny or fun? Remember, there's a difference. Funny is ha 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 ha. It made me laugh. Fun is yay. It was fun. It was enjoyable. Thanks a lot. You're welcome. Okay, so I'll see you guys tomorrow if you show up for that stream. Otherwise, I'm going to be probably doing lives at least through next week. After that, I don't know. I'm getting more and more data. It does seem to be going fairly well, but I'm also having trouble kind of keeping up with the daily lives, and then it's taking time away from other things. And so still no verdict on that, but we'll see. We'll see how things go. But I will see you guys. Yeah, that sort of came out a little bit weird, but guys. There's a little Z there. I'm partial into word devoicing, but see you guys. See, I can still hit that, happen to hit that if I'm speaking lazily, quickly, whatever, even though there's a Z there. So just a final point. That was very nice that happened.